All right, now it's my favorite team to talk about, I think, in the whole season preview. It is time to talk about Bricktown, the Oklahoma City Thunder. So calling it Bricktown really threw me off from being able to say Oklahoma City. Oklahoma just didn't sound like a word all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And
They,
I think
they got Bertans now.
yeah, exactly. That's how you know
Can't
it's
call it
time.
Bricktown anymore.
But yeah, it is time. And I just want to make a really hot take right off the bat before we get into the actual details. And I think this team is winning 50 games if they're healthy this year.
That would be a marked improvement from last season.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
Well,
they're
they won 40 last year.
right, and they are adding an actual center in Chet
Yeah.
Holmgren. I guess
Yeah.
depending on how much weight Chet is able to put on before the start of the season.
I think that's a huge. I've definitely got a note on that. Is that
He
like
has
if
put on, like 15-ish pounds of muscle, at least from the time he was drafted, at least.
yeah.
Based on reports we've seen, pictures we've seen. So maybe Chet isn't going to be a fully realized five his second year in the NBA, but he's trending in the right direction.
We don't like confidently know what Chet is going to be just because we haven't seen it yet. And if he's bad, that will all on its own like hold back the Thunder another year, I think. But assuming he's like okay as a rookie, even that's what my 50 win projection is like. Chet's okay. He does some of the things that we expect him to at a good enough level that 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 he's not holding the Thunder back in any kind of way.
Right. I mean, but their 5-man rotation last year was already pretty. I mean, it was already like the weak spot of the team.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're just so small. They're like they're a team that very much size.
The only way to go is up, even if Chet isn't awesome out of the gates.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like Jalen Williams was very Jalen, the center one, the big man version, was very solid for them at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like a big enough body that was also spacing the floor pretty well. So in theory, just if Chet was out there taking up all those minutes and he was awful and he was just like a liability on both ends, then they could backslide there. But I don't think that is likely because Chet's like, I mean, Chet was a really good college player. Chet looked good in summer league.
Well, you got me with the irrefutable argument. What if one of their main rotation guys just sucks?
But we know
any team, right?
No, but like it's a rookie, right? Essentially, like he's like a special rookie, but like we know there's a different range of expectations for Shea, for J-Dub, for Lou Dort and Josh Giddey, but Chet, we don't really know quite the range of expectations. He could be amazing. He could be the rookie of the year. Or he could like struggle more than we expect with like the physicality of the NBA and the size, and maybe his just like the shot's not there. I don't know. There's like, he's the one I'd be the most like worried about. I'm not really worried. I'm just like the one that I have the least certainty about, where I feel really good about most of the other players on this team.
No, I got you. Yeah, I mean, there's some concerns with Chet, just how he'll hold up to the physicality, but like it's a skinny guy friendly league now, and he has great defensive instincts as we've seen in college and summer league, and those don't always immediately translate over to the NBA. But like, I'd be surprised if he's horrible. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I was watching this like what's his name? Pablo Escobar, a TikTok account, an NBA TikTok account. He's pretty funny, and fairly insightful. Mostly does like jokes, but seems to know a little bit of basketball. And he started off this podcast talking about dudes who bulked up versus skinnier bigs. And at first I thought he was just kind of like gonna have like two examples and it was gonna be a big nothing take, but then he just kind of kept going for a while and I was like, you're kind of convincing me, like and we are about to see the rise
in terms of
this big man,
the skinnier bigs doing better in kind of a more modern context.
There's the longevity of just like, and he just, like guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was one of the examples, and just like, and a lot of guys who bulked up a lot, not even just in the big position, but just sort of like some players who put on muscles really struggling more with injuries over their career. And that basketball, like it might boost you in the short term to have a lot more strength, but being this like explosive strength bound player, being an archetype of less longevity than the slender men.
And we've seen this, like Tim Duncan was a top 5 defense unto himself essentially for like a decade, and he was pretty skinny later in his career.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say skinny. I mean, he was lean, right? Lean but strong.
Yeah. And KG is another one.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you have
let's get into the Thunder's offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So
they had one.
Yes, they did. They made one trade on draft night. So they picked up Bertans for the privilege of moving up 2 spots in the draft. And they selected Kason Wallace out of Kentucky with that pick, number 10 overall. I know you're pretty high on Kason Wallace. And in terms of other offseason moves, they picked up Victor Oladipo for draft assets. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Some second-round picks. And they signed Vasily Micic, who was EuroLeague MVP 2 seasons ago, I believe, and has dropped off a little bit in his EuroLeague production since then. But he's still only like 28, 29, so he's not old. So that could be a pretty solid pickup for them, just kind of at the backup guard position, especially if, I don't know if Kason Wallace is going to be ready to step into that playmaking role right away, so they'll need that. Not a lot of other notable moves. They did sign Jack White to a contract. And yeah, that's about it. Just a couple other things around the margins, but not a super exciting offseason for the Thunder. Definitely the main thing is going to be Chet playing. Yeah. And then we'll see what they have in Kason, but they were high on him. High enough to try to move up the draft, and with the Thunder's draft record, that can often mean good things for the prospect they're looking at.
And one of the reasons there wasn't a whole lot of moves, I mean, they could have made moves in the other direction, but like there are 18 guys now with guaranteed money on this team.
Yeah, they're gonna have to trim the roster a bit just to make it to their opening day.
And even like being strict, I'm looking at their depth chart, and it's like 15 to 17 like highly theoretical rotation players or guys that you either have been getting minutes or like you'd like them to get minutes, or they're just like solid, a weird mix of both like young prospects like Yang and Trey Mann, and then sort of like established helpful veterans like Aaron Wiggins and Kenrich Williams, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Like they're going to probably, I was trying to figure out who they're going to have to cut.
Oh, I have ideas.
No, give me your ideas.
I think there is a pretty clear 3 guys that I would trim off the Thunder and not miss. But I'm curious if we have the same.
Cut him. See if I'm cutting him too.
I'm definitely not a big fan. It's showing on Spotrac that they still have Usman Garuba, but I know they've already cut bait with him.
Yeah, they don't have him. I had to figure that out too.
I'm very comfortable moving on for Poku.
Oh, you think Poku will get cut? He was not on my list.
Well, he's already hurt. He's already going to miss the first few weeks of the season.
Also, Poku is really fun, but Poku is awful. Even though he put up
really bad.
Like some of the numbers were trending up that year, and he still makes plays that leave you like, wow, what was that? But like they were -12 with him on the floor.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where even when he's doing things, even when he gets the occasional block, even when he hits the occasional spot up 3, even if he scores a bit, even if he gets a few dimes, it's not helping the team win in any kind of meaningful way.
He definitely makes plays, but he doesn't do anything else. He doesn't do any of the sort of basic stuff. And I think like one of the reasons the Thunder were very sneakily just ready to go last year, like could have made the playoffs, but they're
close.
They spent a good, they got really close. They made the play-in and they got eliminated in the first game. But Poku was awful, and he played for the first half of the season. So that makes them unserious. Like right off the bat. Also, the guard Jalen Williams was injured to start the season for a few games, and then had to work his way back into the rotation. That was part of the reason Poku was getting more minutes, because they kind of used Jalen Williams as like a 4 a lot of the time. But then they also let Lou Dort just shoot whatever shot he wanted, and that was not a good thing either. And then whenever Trey Mann would come in, he would also get to shoot whatever shot he wanted.
That's guy number 2 that I would cut.
Trey Mann is on my list. Yeah, I would like for them to cut him. I don't see any future with him on the team, considering the guards that they just brought in this offseason. Like he's below all of them for both. Maybe like not for future against Micic, but like against present for both of them, I'd rather see Kason Wallace and Micic get those minutes, and then I don't see him as having this monster potential going forward. Even though, like, he does look like he has the look of a guard that could, become pretty explosive offensively. But like, when are they going to need that? When they have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams on this roster? Like, at what point are you going to need like a guard that comes in and can chuck threes? And like, it's just not going to be that useful considering the other needs they have in their roster. I just don't see a spot for him here. I think he's like probably worth a look somewhere else, but I think OKC's already moved on from Tre Mann being a fit here.
Yeah. I think those are two pretty clear cuts. And then they do Isaiah Joe's on a non-guaranteed deal, but I think they'll bring him back. And then Aaron Wiggins is on a non-guaranteed deal. I think they're probably fine to cut bait with Aaron Wiggins.
That's a tough one because he has played well for them.
Spot up shooter, but he's a really small wing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much defensive impact there. And they also signed Jack White, who's kind of just a bigger and stronger version of Aaron Wiggins.
Yeah, but less established.
Sure.
Like, Aaron Wiggins has already been good.
Yeah.
So we don't know what Jack White's going to be.
Okay, I'll say they'll cut bait with one of those two guys because they kind of fulfill the same role.
Yeah.
And then my last guy, because they still have one roster spot to get rid of, I do think they'll keep Bertans and Oladipo around for a potential trade because those are pretty valuable expiring deals just to make a trade work. I do think the last guy they might cut bait with, and this kind of breaks my heart because I really like him, but it also
don't say it.
It also makes me excited because I really want the Portland Trailblazers to pick him up. Is JRE?
Yeah, I love JRE. I know the Oklahoma City fan base was pretty disappointed with him in year 2. He didn't take a step forward. He was slightly less successful as a finisher. He just didn't. He was a really awesome rookie and immediately was able to do his thing. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of just like didn't have as good of a year in year 2. I'm not ready. Like, I think they should keep him. I think like he really fits the rotation this year in terms of like, I think that's the kind of player you could put next to Chet, especially when Chet's younger, and could just use a guy who is just like strong and aggressive and like a gap filler.
Okay. So who would you get rid of?
I would.
You got to pick 2 guys because you're keeping Poku, right?
Tre Mann, Jack White, and Victor Oladipo.
So you're also getting rid of Aaron Wiggins.
Oh, I gotta cut 4.
You gotta cut another guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jerry a little bit more than Aaron Wiggins. It's a shame. Like, Aaron Wiggins is not the kind of player that should get cut. It's like such a raw deal for him to play the way he has and get cut. But he'll get picked out someone else.
We'll take him.
But yeah, I would be more desperate. It'll hurt me if JRE gets cut. So I'm going to be biased here and hold on to him. I also think on the note about Oladipo and the tradable contracts thing, I mean, it's a really good point, but I also like to point out, like, right now the Thunder have like 60 million in tradable contracts without really touching their core.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to have that many after they make some of these cuts, but just like Lou Dort with 15 million, Bertans with 17 million, Oladipo with 9, Micic with 7, Kenrick with 6, Poku with 5, like that's 60 million right there. And so if you trim that to 50 million, if you trim that to 30 million, you're not taking yourself out of any trade conversation. So that they don't need that much spare money lying around unless they're really married to one of those players. Yeah. Like if Dort is in their long-term vision. I've already kind of stated my opinion on. I mean, I'm fine with like Dort still being on the team if they did kind of the Taylor Jenkins move where they like all the role players are allowed to just attack to their heart's content. And Lou Dort was very excited to do that. Just drove to the rim relentlessly and missed, and shot the 3 relentlessly and missed. And it was just like, what is going on here? And they were like, it wasn't just a marginal thing. Like they were like almost dead last in the league in effective field goal percentage and rim scoring on a team that has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's like the best guard rim scorer in the NBA, and Jalen Williams, who had 77 dunks last year, the most of any player under 6'6". Like this team should be a top 5 rim punishing team. Maybe not, because they don't have like a rim rolling big man, but like Dort, Poku, and Trey Mann basically just disqualified them from being effective at one of the things they're the best at. I'm like, don't do that again unless you're like not serious about this year. And I feel like they spent a lot of last year being unserious, and I'm very curious to see whether they're going to trim some of that fat in their offensive strategy in the rotation.
What do you see their starting lineup being this coming season? Because I think I kind of agree with you that Dort needs to be jettisoned.
So I do have Dort starting right now because I still like not because I wouldn't start him. I would actually start JRE or Kenrick Williams at the power forward.
I was going to go Kenrick Williams. Yeah.
And I put Shea and Jalen Williams in the backcourt with Josh Giddey on the wing. If Lou Dort plays, it's going to be for Kenrick Williams or JRE.
That's two non-shooting wings.
I know.
Surrounding Shea. And Chet, who's, Chet's jump shot is sneakily not that reliable.
I'd say
he's a great mid-range shooter, but he didn't have 3-point range in college.
We'll see who is a non-shooter this year, because like all of those guys are like a step away from being like, it's kind of like, I think when we were talking about the Knicks in a previous podcast, we're talking like going over how like when you build a team out of a bunch of maybe okay shooters, it can really go north or south really fast, as we saw with the Knicks. Yeah, everything went well and they had a good shooting season and they made the second round of the playoffs. And then we saw the Raptors with the same kind of shooting talent have a really bad shooting year and it tanked their season. So I think OKC is in risk of that happening. We know that Shea and Jalen Williams can both shoot the ball a lot better than they did. I really think Jalen Williams could have easily have a 40% shooting season from 3. I think he's a really good shooter. He hasn't done that yet in his career, but I would not be surprised if that happened. Shea doesn't shoot a lot of them, so I don't think that's going to move. And I don't think he should shoot a lot of them, but he's like a capable shooter. He's not a bad one. Giddey's the only one where it's like, something pretty dramatic would have to happen to change, because it's like, the form is just like, that's not going to get better.
He did improve quite a bit his sophomore year in the NBA though.
Yes, he did, but it's easy to improve from 0 to 1 or whatever. He shot a better percentage. He shot less. And then he came out I don't know if you watched Australia play, but it just looked bad again. It wasn't encouraging. He could have a better year shooting the ball, but I feel like a good year for Josh Giddey is like shooting close.
To be fair, that's just kind of Australia's vibe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then Lou Dort, I don't know. He's just pretty consistently been like a 33% shooter that takes a lot of them. So
I would go a slightly different direction than you in terms of the starting lineup. I think the shooting can reach a point where it's just not super tenable for having a passable offense. So I would not start Lou Dort, and I would have Isaiah Joe in there.
I'm fine with that.
He's
too.
The best shooter on the team. And I also think Josh Giddey is big and he's continuing to put on muscle every single year. I think we've talked about this before, but I'm kind of in the camp of I want Josh Giddey guarding bigger wings. I think he has the strength and tenacity to do it.
I think they should play him at power forward.
Yeah.
Also, I was looking into their passing numbers and the play tracking passing numbers, and realizing Shea and Jalen didn't really pass to each other that much. Meaning and then when you look at Josh Giddey's numbers with all of them, it's just a million passes to game to everyone. So he's very much functioning as a bit of a playmaking hub in their drive and kick offense. Their drive and kick offense is really good and really fun, especially if they can stop letting Lou Dort shoot a million times. But it seemed to be a lot of Shea or Jalen passing to Giddey, and Giddey being that connective playmaker that was getting it to the, creating these things, and the other guy's getting the hockey assist or whatever. So I would like to see him kind of in the middle of the floor, where they kind of they put Jalen on the baseline a lot last year and Shea way up at the top. And then they put Giddey on the wing, but I feel like they should more focus on him being kind of that almost like a Draymond style playmaker, where he's kind of setting a lot of screens, coming in and out of the paint, spending basically no time in 3-point shooting possessions besides in the corner, and just being this kind of playmaking monster. And then you want shooting around him. You can't have Giddey or Chet be your worst shooter. So if that's Isaiah Joe, I mean, they already know he can shoot the ball. There's some other candidates. Maybe we get some development from Ousmane Dieng, and maybe they do a trade.
I think if things are going well this season, they should. I mean, they still have a lot of picks to get off. They can't draft people and retain, the players they drafted as well as the players that they currently have and are already excited about. So, I know a lot of their picks aren't necessarily exciting. I mean, I do like the Clippers picks the next couple of years, but aside from that, it's a lot of probably going to be late first, especially as the Thunder continue to get better. So might as well cash some of those guys in, even if it's not a huge upgrade.
They potentially have Houston's pick this year, though.
That's true, but it won't be a top 4, right? It'll be 5 or below.
Yeah, that's a nice pick if it hits.
Yeah, I really want to see how good this draft class is. We've been hearing for months that this is like awful, draft class. Like 2000, what was it? 2014 was that really bad one.
To me,
comparable to that, and it might be, it might not be, but that's kind of the common thought right now.
Yeah. But to me, that all that ever means is that there's not a clear-cut generational prospect in there. That's because to be for media people, not for scouts. Scouts have a better handle on this kind of thing, and they are the first layer of information. But media players don't really start. Like a lot of media guys haven't even started the scouting. Half these guys.
Yes.
So if there's not that one or two bit, we knew that both Scoot and Victor were coming for a long time. So we knew this was a good draft class, but we didn't know as much about, guys 3 to until they started developing. And people always it goes from being a weak draft class to a sort of intriguing one pretty fast. And
yes,
there might not be it's maybe not a great year to hunt for the number 1 pick. But we might be talking about there's a lot of depth in this class. And I've started my scouting a little bit early, and I'm already kind of intrigued by at least 10 guys. So we'll see if that changes.
I'll put it this way in terms of the draft class being quote unquote weak. The guys that were getting lots of hype coming out of high school last year were not guys that I was all that excited about as NBA prospects.
Yeah, I agree.
Lots of small guards, lots of not super athletic big men. But I think that those guys are kind of going to move down, and we're going to see the guys who are actually good prospects come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's a pretty there's a lot of prospects on G League Ignite this year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of players that have gone overseas after doing overtime elite, and there's anyways, it'll be an interesting draft class to monitor. But anyways, what you were saying before about OKC and how they have extra assets, I don't think it can really be overstated. OKC is about to drown in their own assets. Yes. They already don't we just talked about how they have to cut multiple players that they
that are
just in trade
rotation players.
Yeah.
And
that's not going to get better. They've got this mountain of draft, and the players they have this year will improve, and all of a sudden one of them pops, and we're we can't get rid of that guy. So I think people are oh, they can be patient, they can wait it out. I'm no, another wave is coming, and it's going to decimate their roster. They need to move some stuff around. So I guess what do you think OKC should be trying to do? Should they be trying to increase their shooting, their size, find another wing, upgrade the Kenrich Williams type role they have now?
No,
or
definitely.
Should they be trying to trade for a star?
I think they should definitely be trying to solidify the roster to make it make more sense around Shea. I don't know if they're really getting a star, and even if they are, who are they getting that's not over 30?
I made a big list of targets for OKC to go.
There's a lot of guys who are kind of in their early to mid 30s who could potentially be available this season, depending on.
There's some late 20 guys as well. And I think I don't think it's. I kind of wonder if OKC is being wondering if they can get Giannis Antetokounmpo or Joel Embiid. They're going to be able to outbid anyone the moment a trade comes up, right? They're just they just have so many. Well, that's not quite there's other teams with a lot of assets too, like Utah and Houston could. But OKC, I think, is very uniquely positioned to just move in a bunch of extra pieces. But short of those really big stars, why don't we just can I just rapid fire throw names at you and you give
sure.
a brief it? Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, I don't love it.
increases their size, increases their defense.
No doubt.
But is what he doesn't give them is more shooting. So he's
I just feel like the offensive fit is
shooter.
awkward. Also, they'd have to extend him, meaning Pascal would want to extend it in OKC.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the dude loves Toronto and just wants to go back there. So
yeah, it does sound like that. That thing where he was just like, I won't sign an extension. I'm gonna go. Imagine that happens, like your team trades you away and you're like, I don't care. I love them.
Back.
I'm clawing my way back. I'm taking the mid-level exception because they don't have cap space. I just love it here. On the same team though, OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah, I guess that's an easy one with anyone.
That's the easy one.
Julius Randle.
No.
Like shoots a little bit better than Pascal. I think like fits in next well. The things that I said about JRE, Randle can kind of like, I've always liked the idea of Randle when he's absolutely not the star, but just as a guy that's like kind of versatile and big and strong and does a bunch of things. Because you're not depending on him for any one of those things. I think he's kind of a good player.
I'm really out on Julius Randle. Sorry.
All right. Mikal Bridges.
I mean, why would Mikal Bridges be available though?
Well, who knows what the Nets are going to do, right? They're in like complete like section 1 of a rebuild. If they could get drowned in assets for Mikal Bridges, they might think about it. They might also like look at, is he already extended? He is, right?
I mean, the Nets haven't signed him to an extension. He's on year 2 of a 4-year deal.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's like definitely available, but I think OKC could chase whoever they wanted, and teams would be listening because they're just like, here are the picks we're doing.
Remember when Phoenix signed Mikal Bridges to like a 4-year, $90-something million deal, and people were like, "Oh, that's a lot of money for Mikal Bridges."
Yeah, I didn't even think
one of the best contracts in the league.
Yeah, easily, and that was like, I thought it was a good contract even before he was, projecting as a scoring star. He's another guy. He's one of the few guys that didn't look like a clown for Team USA this year as well. Just sort of like, It was always nice to have Mikal Bridges out there.
Yes.
Kyle Kuzma, another kind of Julius Randle type that just like put him in a different role. Don't ask him to be the star. Him running in transition with this team and being like a drive and kick finisher. I like Kyle Kuzma as like a finisher type. I do not like him as a play initiator. Solid defensively, good enough shooter.
Yeah. I can see how it fills a gap. I mean, the Wizards would probably be thrilled if the Thunder were willing to unload some draft assets and young players for Kuzma.
Well, that's the thing. I think it would be like contract matching, like a little bit of draft capital, but that's the thing. They can afford to just like send away.
I guess if the Thunder can get Kuzma without sacrificing a ton, like why not?
Yeah. Let me sweeten let me get a better Kuzma for you. Lauri Markkanen.
I mean, that's an interesting one. I just don't know why the Jazz would want to do that.
A trader Danny would happily accept like a really unfair
just
package.
Overwhelm them. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think they could literally flood you with.
I think Lauri would be a great fit on the Thunder.
Yeah.
You have 4 solid playmaking passing types surrounding him because Chet, in his own right, like not a bad playmaker out of the post.
Yeah.
And then Lowry's just on the receiving end of all that.
Yeah. The finisher. DeAndre Ayton. I'm going to go into some, actually just like the idea of a center. I'm looking at DeAndre Ayton, Jared Allen, Clint Capella, or Okongwu, or Mitchell
I just think
Robinson.
that the Suns would want a center back in return for Ayton. So I'm not sure the Thunder could offer that.
That's true. And I think Jared Allen might be more the target if Cavs were a little bit less. Because I think Chet you could play with another big, which is sort of intriguing. On that note, I also had Daniel Gafford on that list. I also had Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fit with him and Chet better than him and Gobert.
Yeah, I think that's actually a team that might be able to mask some of Towns' weaknesses and reap the benefits of his strengths in terms of just how much shooting he can get in there.
Chet is kind of like a roaming weak side guy. That is, that's pretty tasty.
And just like, I mean, I think the pitch from OKC is pretty easy. Just like, want us to restore all the draft capital you lost? Like,
yeah, of course.
Like, want us to get you out of the jail that you put yourselves in? That's it. I also mentioned like Buddy Hield.
And just like supercharge the T-Wolves with a bunch of depth.
Yeah.
which they could definitely use.
Well, that's it for trade. I do want to just because I feel like it would be remiss if we just didn't talk a little bit about Shea and Jalen Williams, because I just think Shea is possibly the best guard in the NBA right now. I think it's him or Luka or Steph, and I think there's a gap after that in terms of just like the tools and the production. If Shea just keeps up what he did last year, or like, you know, changes some things, continues to develop in small ways, like he's just a monster with his first step and his counter, and the other parts of his game, like the playmaking and the shooting, are things that like I see as like he has high potential to improve at. And he's even been like a pretty good defender, not like a perfect defender yet, but like really can get into the ball on offense. He's a good ball hawk. And then he's like low key a bit of a rim protector, like drops back and gets blocks. And it's just sort of like,
I did see him kind of filling that role in a little bit with the World Cup.
Yeah, he was our best
Canada needed someone to do that, right?
Yeah. It's like, Kelly Olynyk wasn't stepping up. So so Shea was like dropping back and protecting the rim. So I just think like I don't think it's close to some of the other guys, you know, unless someone like Ant really blew up. But like when I look at like Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker and all these guys who are really good, I'm just like, yeah, but they don't do so many of the things that Shea does. And
I would say it's definitely between him and Steph. I've lost a little bit of my luster for Luka this past season, just because he's not the two-way player that Shea definitely can be.
He's just still such an unstoppable monster. And like, I just feel like the minute Luka gets back in the playoffs and is just demolishing defenses again, you're going to be like, oh yeah.
Luka is just going to be putting up 40, 12, and 9 next
until he doesn't just murder people in the playoffs. I'm not going to downgrade Luka based off like a crappy turmoil season. I'm just like, he'd have to stop doing that for me to like sell any Luka stock.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the other guys, I think Jalen Williams is going to be a star this year. Like, I think he's okay. I'm not saying like predicting necessarily making the all-star team. You never know how depth works out, but like he's going to do everything he did in the second half of last season. And I think he's going to shoot it better. Yeah. Like, I just think I think it's so clear watching him that he's just a monster, like an off the dribble, rim attacking, playmaking, like shooter with crafty hands on offense and defense. And I just think like, if anyone thinks that Jalen Williams is going to get incrementally better, I don't think that they were watching him last year. Like, I think he's going to blow up from day one.
Yeah, no, it wasn't incremental last season. He was legitimately a very high level player, even without a 3-point shot at the end of last year.
Yeah. Anyways, I was obviously a little too excited to talk about the Thunder. I had lots of stuff to cover.
We covered a lot. No, this was probably our most comprehensive preseason preview yet. But.
I basically only wanted to talk about the Thunder this podcast. So now that's off my chest, I guess we can move on. Maybe it means we won't get to all the teams today. So just like Thunder time.